Hello, welcome to part 6 of our video series. We're getting through them now, so we're now on to experiences of the workplace. So Debbie, if we'll come to you first, just to give us a bit of an overview of what it is.
Yeah, I think it's worth repeating what this benchmark is, experiences of workplaces, because I know lots of career leaders automatically say benchmark 6 is work experience, and it was a very big difference. It's experiences of the workplace. The requirement for this benchmark is that by the age of 16, every student has had at least one experience of a workplace, and by the age of 18, they've had one more experience. I think it's actually, you and I could talk about this for such a long time because it has been our sort of big focus over the last year to really help schools meet this benchmark in very, very challenging situations. And actually, I think we're at a point now where it's time to change the way we look at delivering experiences of the workplaces. So I suppose we could look at the two ways, talk that through, sort of actual work experience, the traditional work experience, and then virtual experiences of workplaces. I suppose if we take it in that way, we can talk about lots and lots of things there. So if we talk about what schools would typically think about for this benchmark, which is actual physical work experience, I suppose the first thing to say is the barriers that come up constantly for pretty much, almost all schools have got some barriers, but those are, I think the biggest is the reluctance to allow time off the curriculum for work experience is a biggie. I think cost is another one. The cost of risk assessments for placements is definitely a barrier for some schools. And accessibility, I suppose, is another one. We are rural. Very many of our schools are very rural and don't have a lot of employers around them. So logistics is a barrier. You and I will both have schools that do week-long actual physical work experience. For nearly all of their students. Usually it's year 10 or year 12. And that works great for those schools that do that. And I know some of my schools, expect students to find their own work experiences. And I quite like that approach, because if we're looking at this, this element of this benchmark, as work experience, part of that is about going and finding a job and, some of the tools and skills that you need to develop to do that. So I don't mind. I quite like that approach.
I agree with you, Debbie, because I think if that approach was kind of done and delivered and supported the students in the right way, and I totally understand the barriers associated with this. Some students won't have the ability to do that. But if you think about the process of actually going through that whole journey of sourcing a placement, writing to them or emailing, contacting them, writing CV, potentially covering letter, replying, meeting, potentially if there's an interview for the placement as well, actually going in, meeting. In terms of the amount of experience and the developmental opportunities that are involved in that whole process is huge, isn't it? Really, and obviously reflecting at the end on the whole package.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So. I mean, wow, that would be fantastic if every student could have that opportunity. And I think, perhaps for those that can do that week-long block, brilliant. But maybe for those that can't, to look at shorter work experience opportunities, maybe 2 days instead of a week. Maybe looking at work shadowing instead of work experience. So they, the whole sort of take your child to work day. That's a brilliant opportunity to meet this benchmark, and sort of follow someone around in their day in that one day.
Exactly. Yeah, and as long as it's like you've got aims and objectives, there's guides there potentially to help the parent in terms of what they should be doing, their opportunity to reflect on that bit at the end. How did you find it? Did you expect for me to be doing that? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That would be a really, really impactful.
I mean, I think definitely every employer, be it, parent, friend, or another employer, I know that they need some support in how do I give a good experience of this work, of my workplace. So much like, which we'll cover in a second, our how-to guide for virtual work experience, I'd like to be providing the sort of thing for actual work experience that schools can give to prospective employers who will do something, just so that they understand, a little booklet that the school and the young person can complete. These are the aims, these are the skills we want to develop in this experience. Here's a suggested sort of timetable that you might want to consider, and then an area for reflection for the employer and the young person, something that makes it easier, because I know lots of employers have said to me, I would do some work experience, but to be honest, I really don't know what to do with them. So making it meaningful, helping them make it easy, I think is something that will really help. But I mean, even without us doing that, schools can do something similar to that themselves. But I think it'd be nice for us to work on that as well. Even using our virtual guide at the moment would help them, because no reason you couldn't do that. So I think, in terms of actual, there's lots of new ways of thinking about that. It doesn't have to be a work block. It can be something that the student finds themselves. It can be a day shadowing a member of their family or whatever. But it is important that experience, no matter how it's approached, has got some learning outcomes identified and some opportunity for skills development and reflection. And then, of course, we can talk about the alternative, which is virtual experiences of workplaces. And, you and I have helped schools set up some virtual work experience programs over the last few months. Maybe if we both give an example of one of the ones that we've done, it will help everyone understand how this might work. So one of my schools had a one-day virtual experience of workplace with Viking signs. So this was Walton School in Grantham. Viking Signs in Grantham went and did a one day. So they started off with a virtual tour of their factory and their offices, and that was pre-recorded. And then the MD talked about the business and its development and his job and how he became doing that. And then he introduced a couple of other members of the team. So, the marketing manager, the factory manager, and I think there was the finance director as well. They did a bit of employability skills in there, and then they got set a challenge to design. So Darren from Viking Science asked students to go and look at what they currently did, what their product range was, identify a gap, design a new product. And so the students did that in teams, and then they sent their presentation back to Viking Signs. And then in period 6, the team from Viking Signs zoomed back in and gave feedback on everyone's projects, and then actually took the camera and showed the winning design actually in production, being produced on the website for sale. They've already had a couple of sales actually.
Wow.
So that was a really, really good example.
We've had two as well. I have a couple of examples. One was Tong Engineering, working with Summer Coats. They did it with a group of year 10s, about 30 year 10 students. And to be honest, it was a very similar model. We used, when we pulled together the virtual work experience guide, we used that, and it just worked. I mean, Tong Engineering pulled out all the stops in terms of making sure that they had booklets that went to the school. They did a laser cutting out of a model plane, so the students could folded all this metal in the right way, and it produced like a model aircraft, which was great. They did a potato sorting exercise because they're an agricultural machine organization or company. And they did, again, like they did an enterprise challenge, which was really, really well received. It was well delivered. Again, it was meaningful because there was aims and objectives set out. And that once it's been done, the work was done at the front end to make sure everything's right, but it's complete now, and they've got plans to run that next year. And it's an off-the-shelf kind of moment, really.
It totally is. I've got a similar one. One of my, it was a Lincoln estate agents, Kinetic. They pre-recorded their front bit, their tour, their intros, their roles. They asked for a social media ad to be created. And, and again, that's live now. They're using the winning one. But now I've used that a couple of times because now another school or the same school can use it again. And the only sort of time requirement from the employer is that end bit where they judge and give feedback. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I do understand, though, in terms of the difficulties. I can imagine some careers leaders watching this thinking, yeah, but Alex, we've got 250 students in a year. How can we run so many of those virtual workshops to make sure that all our students get that opportunity? And I think where the success in that is to have multiple different models going off at the same time. You might have there's 30 or 40 of those students that would be really comfortable going off and finding their own placement. They can go and we'll provide all the things that they probably need for preparation, perhaps a session with parents. And perhaps you ask the students to pick which model that they're going to do to satisfy that particular benchmark, and they have to do that. Another one is that I've seen done in the past is that any external trips that get signed off by the school, that there needs to be an experience of the workplace element to it. So I think one of the examples I heard was end of year trip to Alton Towers. They had to have at least half an hour with the managing direction to talk about how they run the facility, the job opportunities that are there, the finances that they bring in every year, which is their most profitable ride, all that kind of stuff. So there are little things that can be done, and it doesn't necessarily all have to be crammed into a year 10.
It doesn't.
There's something that you could do in year 8 or year 9, because to satisfy the benchmark, it is as long as they've had one experience before year 11 and then one before they leave.
And it could just be a tour. It could be a 2-hour tour of a workplace. I think the criteria for how does this experience meet this benchmark is that there's some predefined learning outcomes. That there is some experience of the physical workplace, whether that's virtual or real. That there are 2 or more roles introduced to students, that there's two-way interaction, and that there's some sort of challenge or task. So it could be that happens afterwards. If they go to Alton Towers and all of the criteria is met, Alton Towers could say, go and design a new ride or a safety sign, or they go back, they do it, they can send it back, they can get some feedback, and that's that met. So it's just about looking at this benchmark creatively and broader, isn't it?
I think that's it. I think it's approaching it with that kind of growth mindset, isn't it? And if that traditional work experience model is not something that you can do, it's what's next best? What can you do to try and help satisfy that one, isn't it? So,
absolutely.